Excited to have my next guest on the show. It's Dustin "Scrappy" Lampros, who defended his featherweight title at Shamrock FC 349 when he beat Scott Ettling via ground and pound in the very first round. Dustin, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, man. I'm doing great. I'm excited to be on here talking with you.
Yeah, man, we're excited to have you on. Another fight, another win, an impressive fashion, getting them out of there in the very first round. What was the game plan going in? I have to imagine, you're happy with the ultimate outcome in defending your title.
Yeah, 100% happy with the outcome. The game plan, which my biggest takeaway from the fight was how well I executed the game plan going into it, and that was like a big, like obviously winning was great, but like having an idea of what he would do and being ready for it, and it actually happening exactly the way I thought. I knew he'd be aggressive. I knew he would come out, trying to get my face early, and eventually, once exactly like what happened, once I started touching him with my leg kicks, I knew he wouldn't want to stand on the feet any longer. And him being a ground guy with like 6 first round finishes, arm bars or triangles or something like that, I knew that he was just going to try to wrestle me against the cage and to look to get me down, and that's exactly what happened. As soon as I started touching with the leg kicks, he pressured me against the cage, and I just had to ride it out. That was the game plan. I had to weather the storm. I always say that no matter who you are, anybody on the planet for one minute or 2 minutes can be a problem. Anybody can be tough for a minute or two. With adrenaline going. So I knew it was a 5 round fight. I knew that he wouldn't be controlling himself. I just from his previous fights, and I know how he comes out, so I knew that he would try to give it everything he had in the first round. So my whole plan going into the fight was to weather the storm, make him make a mistake like he did, and just capitalize on it.
So with him being as aggressive as you're saying, he is, and just his style as a fighter, did you think that this was going to get out of the first round, or are you thinking that maybe okay, first couple minutes, like you said, you weather that storm, then you get him out of there late in the first?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know if it would be in the first like that. I honestly I thought, it's 5 rounds. I was saying, hey, the first round, I might even he might win it. He might win it by just based on me being not really active and me just kind of letting him burn himself out. Me being having more of a fight IQ, like a higher fight IQ than him. I knew that with it being 5 rounds, I just needed to stay patient and take my time. And it's exactly what happened. The finish just came kind of naturally as soon as I seen him being content with staying on his back, because that's where he wins all his fights. And he in his head he's gassed up thinking like, oh, I'll submit anybody, but he's also fighting a bunch of guys that don't really know, in my opinion, know what they're doing there. And I know that I'm not going to go get in the guard of somebody who that's his only chance of winning. So if his only chance of winning is submitting me, like hypothetically, obviously he could catch me in a punch, whatever, but his go-to is submissions. I eliminate that factor by not sitting in his guard. And yeah, man, I don't know, just me having him on his back. I knew how well my ground and pound is. My ground and pound's probably one of my top weapons in my fight game, and it just kind of came. I seen him being sitting there content, and then before that finish came, I was teeing off on him a little bit already with some ground and pound. So I knew that if he sat on his back any longer, it was going to be over. But I heard the announcer say 1 minute left, 1 minute remaining. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna finish strong here. And it was the first punch I threw in the sequence that finished him that he was out cold after that. And then his hands kind of went stiff, like he just kind of went out of it, and his hands were up. So it looked like he was defending, but he was out of it, and his hands were kind of in my face, so I wasn't too sure. So I just kept going, and then the ref finally, obviously jumped in.
Yeah, you got to keep going until the ref pulls you away. We see that all the time on every level of MMA across the world. And Dustin, I have to imagine you're kind of like the the golden boy for Shamrock, right? 9 fights as a pro, all 9 for Shamrock. Does that add more pressure to you to go out there and not just win, but do it impressively?
Yeah, no, I mean, the whole Golden Boy thing is it just I I knew getting into this sport, I was behind. I didn't have a background in martial arts. I didn't have a D1 wrestling background or boxing background or a karate background or jiu-jitsu background. I was just an athlete. I was a football, baseball player. So I knew that I needed to find a promotion that would want to work with me and build me, and luckily, Shamrock, I started with them as an amateur and had a few fights with them, and I kind of created a little fan base there. So when I went pro, it worked out well. I got to go back home, see my family because I don't live there anymore, get to fight in front of them. Yeah, it does. That was one thing, I was talking to people about. Like, I feel more pressure going into this fight than I did on the Ultimate Fighter. Like I felt way more nervous, way more going into this because I got all my friends, my family, everybody's there expecting me to win. They've never seen me lose there, so they're expecting me to come out on top. And that cage is not even a quarter the size of a UFC cage. So it's way more intimidating. It's you take one step, you're in each other's face. There's
Mhm.
no feeling out, there's no backing up. Like it's very, very small. And compared to like the Apex cage that I fought in, you have so much room. You feel like you had like night and day feel. But yeah, I feel way more pressure fighting for Shamrock just because of that
Mhm.
what you said. I'm expected to win. Um, I'm in front of my friends and family like that. You know, I'm I'm coming back. I train with the guys I train with, regardless if my opponents think that doesn't matter. It does. That's why I do it. And yeah, like it is a lot of pressure. And Scott, he is crafty off his back. Who knows? Say I kind of black out in there and I don't keep my cool and I want to go into the ground with him and he does catch me. There's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts,
Mhm.
but I think my fight IQ is what won me that fight. Just staying calm, staying patient, and knowing that, I told my corner before the fight to remind me when I'm in there, hey, he only has 1 or 2 minutes of this to just relax, Scrappy, you're fine. And my corner did. Evan Elder was in my corner, and he just kept saying, he's like, Scrappy, he's only got 2 minutes. Just let him do his thing. He's on, and keep my chin down, my hands up, my guard tight, stay sharp. I knew that the fight was going to be mine.
And you're in a real good spot right now, my man. Still undefeated as a pro. I have to imagine, what's next for you could be, a contender series shot. It could be maybe straight into the UFC. Like, where do you feel you're at right now? What do you hope is next?
Yeah, like I've said before, I'm done worrying about it. I'm done stressing about it. My whole life is revolved around fighting. My whole adult life, my everything I do has been about fighting, and my whole identity's been in fighting. And this past year, I've gotten over that. I don't, fighting's not who I am. It's what I do, and I'm gonna let God take the reins on my career and my path. What do I want? Yeah, obviously, I would love to, get signed to the UFC. I do think that is next. Contender series, I don't think I'm gonna have to do. I think it's gonna be more of a short notice call. A week or two notice, and I think that's kind of the plan right now. Is just stay ready for that. And I might have already had something come up here soon, so we'll see. But yeah, I mean that's and if I had to go fight on the regional scene again, that's fine. Because I believe everything happens for a reason, and whatever's meant to be will happen. So I'm pretty content either way, where any of it goes. But obviously, I would love to just make my UFC debut next.
Of course. Now we saw you fight at bantamweight on the Ultimate Fighter. This most recent fight here, you defended your 45 title. What are your head thought process as far as weight class moving forward? Are you going to fight at both, or do you feel like you want to stick to just one?
Yeah, no, I mean I'm 29. I'm not a naturally just ripped up guy. I don't have this fast metabolism. I mean, I went and got my metabolism tested and it said I do, but I generally I hold weight easy, I walk around 165, 160, 165 and yeah, the whole 45, the only reason that even happened was because the fight prior to this one, the opponent said he would only fight me if it was for a title, and then I said I'd only fight at 45 because it was short notice. It was only like 2.5, 3 weeks notice, and so that's how that worked out. And then I won the title, and then Shamrock called and said, "Hey, Scott Ettling wants to fight you for the title," and I said, "All right, sounds good." But I'm for the UFC, I'm gonna go to 35 unless it's a good short notice fight for me. In the sense of like it's not some monster at 45. But yeah, I'm not a true 45er.
Okay.
I'm humble enough to know that I'm not big enough. I don't think right now to be fighting at 45 at the highest level. But things could change in the future. I could put on some muscle, put on some weight. Um, but yeah, no, the goal is to be in the UFC bantamweight division.
Okay, fair enough. That makes sense. Tell me, man, what was the, I guess, the lesson learned? How did you grow from that loss in the tough house to Vince Murdoch?
Oh man, it was the best thing to happen to me. It's funny. Vincent told me after the fight, he was like, "Man, you know, I've learned the most from my losses." And I I honestly it took me a little bit, but I realized that fight was meant to go that way. Everything about it. A lot of things in that fight people don't realize. I came into that fight not fighting for almost 2 years before that. I had a 18, 19 month layoff, I think, just because of COVID and shows getting canceled and everything else. And then I knew I was going to be on the tough show way ahead before it even got announced. And they told me not to fight. So I was waiting and waiting and waiting. But I learned a lot. I went in that fight super cocky, super like in my head, like I can't be touched, and that's why I fought the way I did. Had my hands down, backing them up the whole time, and I paid for it. Like I realized like at the highest level there is none of that. You can't do that unless you got the guy really hurt. You can't do that. And even then, but yeah, it was the best thing that could have happened. I don't think I would have been necessarily ready for the UFC if I went in right then and there after that. I think the way the matchups would have worked, I probably would have drew Ludwig or something, and I would probably beat him stylistically, and then I would have been in the finale. And there's a good, I probably wouldn't have been ready to be in the UFC. And I think this past 2 years I've grown a lot. I only have four was it 3 fights, 3 or 4 fights since the show. Yeah, 4, but I've done a lot of like skill train, a lot of work in the gym, at Kill Cliff, and we go live at Kill Cliff all the time. So I'm getting hard rounds, and they're harder than most of my fights. So it's not like I'm not staying active, and I don't believe in ring rust, as you can see. I was off for 13, 12 months, 13 months from this fight, and I went out there like never skipped a beat. And even on the tough show, I did great until I got caught. You know what I mean? I was doing well, and but I learned a lot. Yeah, I learned a lot that most important thing is I gotta be protecting myself at all times, no matter how the fight's going, and no matter how I feel. I gotta treat the guy like anything can hurt me. So
Gotcha.
yeah, big it was a big lesson learned there.
It clearly looks like you've definitely evolved even more so since we've seen you in the tough house. One thing I learned about you, Dustin, that I didn't know until doing my research here for this interview, is what you do catching child predators, and that is very cool, man. I applaud you for doing that. Can you just tell me how long you've been doing that for, and how that all came about?
Yeah, it's been close to around a year. I met I had a good friend of mine, Ryan Montgomery, who is a cybersecurity owner, ethical hacker. He's many talented things, and we were sitting there one time talking, and he's telling me how he's the info guy for these big predator organizations, and I was like, wow, that's crazy, like, and he started showing me videos. He was like, yeah, I do the behind the scenes stuff, like find the info on them. He goes, I've never had anybody, I'd love to do it in person, but I've never had anybody that would do it with me. And I just kind of looked at him. I'm like, well, shoot, you're talking. I'm like, I'll go confront these guys, like, and he kind of showed me how bad the situation was. So that's when I was like, yo, like, I'm 100% in, like, I will do this. And thinking on it, I have 2 people, that are very close to me in my life that were victims of child predators. So, and I was like, you know what, I'm in, I'm about this, let's go do it. Like, I train full time. I don't do anything else outside of fighting really, and I think the best way to make an impact in the world, or best thing to live your life by, is making an impact, helping others. So when he kind of presented the idea and I said we should do it, he was like, all right, I'm about it. So we started, that's kind of how it came about. And yeah, it's been going on about a year now. And I try to do as much as I can. It does cost, it does cost money to keep the operations going, to make the catches happen. So that's kind of the holdup right now,
Mhm.
so that's why I created a online merch store at 561pc.com in efforts to kind of bring in some funds to help, fund it all. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. It's wild. But it's like fighting almost. It's a adrenaline, knowing it's different than fighting, because fighting isn't really necessarily helping other people, but I'm getting to do something extreme that is also helping other people. And we did it for 2 months before we ever posted about it. And then someone we were just turning them into the cops. And then someone was kind of brought it up to us like, yo, you guys should just post it, because we didn't know how it would look, him being a business owner, me being a fighter. I just didn't know what people would think or say, which, not that we cared about that, but we just were turning them into the cops. We didn't think much about it. And then once I started posting it, it kind of took, fire, and kind of got gained a lot of attention.
How many predators have you confronted and actually caught?
Um, I think around 15 or 16, and that's doing it here and there. Like we probably caught 5 or 6 in our first week or two. That was us like dedicating all our time to it. Um, but yeah, it's just there's a lot to it that a lot of people don't understand. It's more than just meat. There's been times where we go and we wait for the predator for 2 to 3 hours and they don't show up.
Mhm. Yeah. Now,
I mean, or go and do a catch and we have 2 or 3 meet us within back to back. You know what I mean? So
n-
yeah,
i
it's.
I was just gonna say, I'm sure like the people that you're catching are, it's like a wide variety of people, but is it typically older men trying to get with younger like girls or boys, or is it just kind of all over the place?
It's yeah, it's typically older men. Yeah. I mean, the ages range. They could be 20, 21 years old all the way up to 65. But yeah, and it's in our so we have decoys, and our decoys are people that don't live here. They're that's what they do, part time or on the side, that we pay. They go out and they create these accounts, and they're the ones who talk to these predators. I don't talk to them. They do, and they set up the meetings and whatever. But they're the decoys are are girls, 11, 12, 13-year old girls. And yeah, so if we used like a little boy, like it's hurts me to say this, we would have 2 catches a night if it was a young boy that we were using as a decoy. I mean, it's bad. It's terrible. It's something that's so unreal and disgusting how many predators there are out there.
It's really just sad. That's why I applaud you for doing what you're doing. I think it's an amazing thing, and I'm sure there's a zillion people out there that feel the exact same way. Have you ever had to use your MMA skills when you confronted these guys? Have they ever tried to get physical with you?
No, no. I mean, um, I don't know how to say this without saying, like, think about it. These dudes are coming to meet children. 9 times out of 10, they're soft. They're
Mhm.
scared. They're antsy. They're not real men. You know what I mean? They're not. They're they're not right up here. And you have someone like myself. I'm not a big dude by any means. But you come up. I do have cauliflower ears, so I have had guys look and kind of like, all right, like or I had a bruise from sparring. But yeah, no, these guys don't ever test me. I mean, I've had one guy pull a gun out from distance, but no one got hurt or anything, and that was kind of scary. But I already like I used my intelligence to know that, like, all right, this guy, like, I looked at his rap sheet before. I knew he was super dangerous. I knew not to follow him to his car, and he even warned me. He's like, "You better not follow me to my car," and then he pulled out a gun, but we were so far away,
Mm.
and we ran the store to get away from him. But no, no one's ever tried me, which that's not obviously. Every comment, every person wants me to beat him up, right? Everybody wants that to be the goal ending of the video, me just smashing some child predator's face in. And of course, I would love to do that, but obviously, that's not realistic. So I'm never gonna be able to put my hands on them unless one of them touches me first. And even then, I don't know how far I would go. I'm pretty self-controlled. I got pretty good composure. I don't. I mean, I'm sure I would maybe do something, but I'm not looking to catch a charge.
Right.
Would I say it's worth it? Sure. I'm doing a good thing, but if I can do it, go about it professional, and get these guys caught up with the law. That's probably more important uh,
Yeah,
than
100%.
me. You know.
And the good thing, man, like you're getting them off the street. That's really all that matters. You're getting them apprehended and off the street so they can't hurt anyone, which is amazing. Again, before we wrap up here, Dustin, as far as like time frame before your next fight, you said short notice opportunity into the UFC. If they were to call you next week and say, "Hey, we got the right fight for you," are you ready now, or how far away do you think would be the realistic time frame?
So being completely honest, like cardio wise and condition wise, fight wise, yeah, I'm ready. I could fight right now. 3 hard 5-minute rounds. But weight wise, no. I mean, after the fight this past week, I've been eating. I've been enjoying because a lot of people don't realize, even though it was at 45, like I was waiting for from maybe March until May. Maybe it's like 2.5, 3 months, maybe even a little before. I was preparing for short notice. Then I was told I might get the call. So I had 3 months of me just busting my ass, dieting, and it broke me. I was broken. I couldn't do it anymore. I started eating again towards end of July. Um, it broke me though, and then yeah, I couldn't do it. I can't. It wasn't healthy. Like I cut a lot. I lose a lot of weight. Like I get really really shredded, and it takes a lot of effort. It's me weighing out each food, eating exactly on time. So as far as me fighting next week, it ain't gonna happen. I mean, even 2 or 3 weeks. I was told there was an opening October 14th possibly, and I don't know. I don't know if I can make 35. Like I don't know if I would want to do that to myself. Um, I'm like you said, I'm sitting good. I'm 9-0, 8 finishes, 29 years old. I'm in a really good spot, and I'm not saying that I have some upper hand and I get to call the shots. I'm not saying that, but I definitely want to be smart with my next move. I don't want to just take something because I'm antsy or want to jump. Like the right fight will come at the right time.
Can't wait to see it, man. Whenever that is, I'm looking forward to seeing you take that next jump and fight in the UFC, which I think is inevitable. It's going to be coming, whether it's next month or a few months down the line. Again, Dustin, I appreciate your time. Congrats on defending your title for Shamrock. Before we do sign off here today, man, I want to give you the floor. If there's anyone you want to thank, anything you want to plug, the floor is yours.
Right on, man. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Just want to thank everybody that supports me. All my sponsors. There's a bunch of sponsors that have been backing me for a while now. My nutritionist, Doug Coleman. Coleman, he's been with me every step of the way for the past 7 pro fights. So big shout out to Doug. I can't thank him enough for all he does. Big shout out to Killcliff FC, IHP, my strength conditioning gym, Rio Santana in specific, my strength conditioning coach, who's been there right by my side for a while now, and yeah, I mean, it's everyone that supports me. I just can't thank you guys enough, and you guys can follow me at Scrappy 135 MMA, and you can keep up with my cred catching at 561 PC.